Are you ready to become a change maker? Our 48-week postgraduate program in public policy or the PGP may be just the thing for you. This hybrid program is designed to give you both the theoretical foundation and hands-on experience needed to excel in policy making. With a mix of expert-led webinars, in-person workshops, and policy simulation exercises, you'll gain real-world skills along with personalized mentorship. Through our policy programs, we connect good people to good ideas and good networks. Apply now at the link in the description to make an impact.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hello everyone, welcome to a new episode of All Things Policy. This is Swathi Kalyani, and today I have with me Shri Keerthi. We both are research analysts in the geospatial program at the Takshashila Institution. Hi Keerthi.
Hello Swathi.
So today we are going to discuss about a disaster that's comparatively discussed less unless it happens somewhere around the world, and that's wildfires or the forest fires, right?
Yeah.
So today we are going to discuss about what is actually a forest fire, what is its impact, and probably its significance with respect to India more, and focus on what are the issues or challenges that India currently faces with respect to this particular disaster. So let's dig in.
Sure, we will.
So let's start with how common or like what are wildfires, of course. How common are wildfires in India? What are their, challenges that these forest fires pose for the environment as well as those communities which live across those regions?
Wildfires in India are becoming a real issue lately. They are not just a danger to the environment, but also to the local communities. Over the last 20 years, we have seen a huge jump in both the number and severity of these wildfires. A study that Council of Energy, Environment and Water, which we call CEEW, even showed that forest fires have increased tenfold during this time. It's pretty alarming that more than 62% of Indian states are now at risk for high intensity fires. States like Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Andhra Pradesh, and Uttarakhand are really feeling that impact. For instance, in April 2024, Odisha alone reported over 4,200 forest fires in just 1 week. That's a massive rise compared to the previous years. The forest fire season in India usually runs from November to June.
Wow, there is a certain season. Okay, so it is like the dry season, where there is more proneness for these fires to spread across, right?
Exactly. But thanks to climate change, it starts much earlier and can last almost 6 months.
Wow.
For instance, in April 2004 alone, there was over 75,000 forest fires. Both natural events like lightning and the dry conditions and the human actions, like carelessness with campfires during debris, are to blame. In fact, about 90% of the wildfires are caused by the people. And practices like shifting cultivation and setting fires to scare away wildlife also play a significant role. Plus, climate change is making everything hotter and drier, which only worsens the fires. These fires have devastating impact on biodiversity as well, destroying habitats for many species, including endangered ones like tigers. They can also severely affect water systems by increasing soil erosion and changing local climates and turning some areas into droughts. For communities near forest, wildfires are very tough. If you see, people lose access to essential resources like firewood and medicinal plants, and also agricultural lands get destroyed. Tragically, there are even cases where lives have been lost, like in the wildfire incident in Tamil Nadu, for an example. Fighting these fires isn't cheap either. States like Uttarakhand have needed to use army helicopters to tackle the major blazes, which highlights the severity of this issue. Frequent fires hit the livelihoods of those relying on forest tourism, like ecosystem and all.
Interesting. I also noticed the point of shifting cultivation. This is something we have been studying in our geography textbooks, probably from 8th standard, 9th standard, where we know that there are these tribals in India which still practice shifting
Right,
cultivation.
right.
It's also, you can't even blame them because it is kind of the only livelihood that they have. So it also interlinks how, if you have to solve these forest fires, probably first you have to create alternative livelihoods for such communities
Exactly.
which practice these things, so that you at least reduce the chances. And also, another interesting fact is how you said that there was a huge number of incidents, around more than 1,000 in Odisha, which happened, which also, it isn't like one forest is burning so many times, because Orissa itself has these Eastern Ghat provinces and so much of these forest regions within that region. So there are multiple incidents which are happening across the region at particular instant. And also, it might be a small fire, right? It might be just in this 1 kilometer square, or it might be lesser than that or more than that. So it is also, again, becomes important to know this region, how much area actually a forest fire is, rather than us just saying that this was a number. Probably we can also say these were, how we say for earthquake, right? It was a high impact earthquake or moderate impact. Probably analyzing the aerial impact would also let us understand and better classify this forest fire itself. Interesting. And can you tell me what geographical areas, can you elaborate on that part, like in India, are at risk of wildfires, and the reason, probably why are they at risk, and how has this changed over time? As you said, climate change and all these factors. So, what is the evolution that has happened in India itself with respect to this?
Sure. India faces growing wildfire threat, with an over 62% of its states are at risk, especially in certain regions. If you call it as high risk area, let's say northeastern regions, the states like Mizoram and Tripura are particularly vulnerable due to the traditional shift cultivation and difficult terrain. And if you come to central India, central part of India, areas like Jagdalpur and Indravati National Park are fire prone because of deciduous forest and human activities. And further moving to western and eastern Ghats, despite more moisture, these regions see frequent fires mainly due to human interference. And if you move further, like northwestern Himalayas, Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh are at risk, primarily due to the pine forest and anthropogenic activities. And recent trends, if you follow, like there have been a significant 52% increase in the wildfire incidents over the last 2 decades, driven by the climate change and the human activities as well. As I've been telling before, states like Odisha, Chhattisgarh, and Madhya Pradesh have been reported the highest incidence areas recently. And we should thankfully say that advances in technology like GIS based models are helping to improve fire protection strategies, like especially in places like Vellore in Tamil Nadu and all. Overall, the risk of wildfires is one of the on the rise of across India, and it's essential to stay aware and proactive in this wildfire.
I would like to also just say a personal story. Like we have seen in Kerala, there is a high rubber cultivation which happens, and rubber plantations are across. And so what happens is, once these trees lose their, ability to produce the rubber milk or whatever the products, they're just burnt. So you would just see a hill which is like, and you'll just see the fire across, and you'll be like, okay, is this a forest fire? But it's actually just a farmer who has actually burnt his, agricultural land, which also then maybe is reported as a forest fire. And there is also a possibility that once these rubber trees are ignited or whatever, they spread on to the other grasslands in the mountainous region. And yes, probably the animals in that, or the birds in that, we really don't have a complete picture of how the biodiversity is impacted about it yet. And let's come to the recent incident that happened, and that happened at the international level. There was a recent wildfire in January, around January
Yeah,
25.
25.
Yeah, so
California.
2025 that affected Los Angeles and it in California, and it was destructive in scale. We remember again, as you said, these helicopters which are being used in Uttarakhand. There were also helicopters and choppers which were spraying probably some powders or whatever to distinguish the to reduce the impact and all the disaster. And it was so what makes California so vulnerable to this wildfire? Are there particular geographical or climatic reasons? And do you see any similarities between the wildfires that happened in California and that could or that have happened in India also?
If you see the news is about in Jan 2025, by looking at the news, we would have feel very sad because the pictures they were posted about the people lost their lives, people lost their houses, and they just lost everything and just come to road and just we feel very bad by looking at those pictures and just think of how they're gone through with that. And California is at high risk for wildfires mainly due to there are some of the parameters like climate change, strong winds, vegetation and geography, like human activities like that. If you see the climate change, the warmer temperature and the longer dryness seasons have dried out the landscape, making it easier for fires and to ignite the and spread the wildfire. And when come to the strong winds, we have all heard about the Santa Ana winds can quickly carry the fire across long distances, fueling the fires and all. And when it comes for the vegetation and geography, the diverse plant life and rugged terrain create ideal conditions for the wildfire. And the dry vegetation, you see, often form a drought, act as an fuel, and the human activity as well. The factors like unattended campfires and downed power lines also contribute to the wildfires. So how can we similar with the with wildfires in India means like interestingly California and India share some wildfire challenges. Like if you see the same climate change, human activity, flammable vegetation, management needs, and all. If you see the climate change, both places like India and the California seeing increased fire risk because of the climate change, which leads to drought and the higher temperatures. Even the same happening with the California too. In the human activity in India, especially, over 90% of forest fire are caused by humans itself, whether by accident or unintentionally. The same goes with the California too. And flammable vegetation, like both regions experience dry conditions that makes plants more likely to catch up the fire. And both need better fire management strategies. India could benefit from California's methods probably, like early warning system and better governance.
Also, I guess California is the dry region, right? As you
Yeah.
said, and India has enough dry regions. Like India is quite diverse in that sense. You can't compare it to just one small part of America itself. But yes, I mean, at least these Chhattisgarh or the Jharkhand, Orissa
Jharkhand.
regions, which you said, and also certain sections of the Eastern Ghat might come in the rain shadow regions, which make them much drier, still having those grassland and shrubs vegetations, right, which are again more prone because these are the dry vegetation. These grasses have much the taller or the grasses which are higher in their height, and they have much more chances to spread this across. Yes, that's so we need to look at probably some interlinking corporations and also how they would have managed it, right? As we said, there were so many systems and technologies which they were incorporated, because obviously it's not like you can
Stop completely.
the
Yeah.
forest fire. It's about how you deal with the disaster itself. Also, let's get into the geospatial part if possible. How has geospatial technology helped in our studying and our analysis of wildfires itself?
Cool. You know, this satellite data really plays a crucial role in tracking the wildfires. It helps us to keep an eye on things throughout the entire life cycle of a wildfire, which is pretty impressive, you know. Before a fire even starts, satellites can help with the fuel loading mappings. And for example, satellites like Landsat monitor how healthy the vegetation is and how much moisture it has. If the vegetation is dry or stressed, it could easily become fuel for a fire. This make it possible to identify areas that are at higher risk of catch up of the wildfire. Then there's a risk prediction as well. Satellites analyze factors such as plant moisture and ratio of leaf to dead foliage to predict where wildfire might occur, especially when the weather is particularly windy. You know, once the fire breaks out, the active fire detection capabilities come into play. Like instruments like the thermal and infrared sensors on Landsat can detect the temperature on the surface. This helps to identify fires early on. Plus, satellites provide real time tracking of the fire's location and the movement as well, which is immensely helpful for the firefighters trying to strategize how to contain it. And after the fire, like satellites are also valuable for burned area mapping. They use infrared and thermal bands to accurately map the extent of the damage by comparing images taken before and after the fire. This precision is critical for recovery planning, but advances in algorithms have made these maps even more accurate, revealing more areas that were affected than the previous methods did. And let's not forget about post fire factor recovery. Satellites track how forests recover over time using measures like NBR, means normalized burn ratio. This helps monitor the severity of the burn and how vegetation regrows in the areas that follow. They even provide insights into how factors like drought and climate change might impact recovery, which is valuable for the conservation efforts. So, in a nutshell, the satellite data is absolutely essential for understanding the entire wildfire life cycle, from predicting risk to monitoring active fires, assessing damage, and aiding the recovery. It is vital tool in wildfire management. I can tell that.
Okay, so there were a lot of stages and phases that you told where satellite images are useful. So let's try to probably bullet in points if we can. So it's like before a forest fire would
Yeah.
happen, we can use satellite
Satellite
images that are
images.
available to
Hmm.
understand the temperature variations that are happening across the regions, and probably if there is a high temperature which is happening in an area with dry vegetation, or a certain kind of vegetation which can spread or can be ignited quickly, we can mark those areas and probably monitor them continuously for any possible damage that can happen. Then when the fire has started at some point, we can quickly have these again visualizations to understand how the wind patterns are moving across, to at least predict where this
Where this will move
yes,
toward.
move towards. And also it also provides these data to these choppers and those firefighters or disaster management forces to know where exactly to reach and how to reach there in a safe manner, and hence create the mitigation strategies. And then the next one is, of course, once the fire is done, you can assess the damage. This area was damaged, so if there was a house here, probably create a compensation mechanism for that person, right?
Yeah, and I would like to add out here, and we can actually calculate how much area has been burnt.
Correct, exactly. So that also helps in, so it is like you actually have much accurate empirical data if you have these geospatial technologies. And post recovery, of course, how the vegetation is growing, and continuous monitoring that, yes, our forest is back in shape, at least
Yeah.
in a safe manner. uh, that was quite comprehensive. So what are some policy recommendations that that India should consider when it comes to preventing and mitigating the impact of, sorry, I shouldn't say the word preventing, because we don't know how much we can control wildfires once it started, but at least mitigating the impact of these wildfire management, and probably as just as a whole disaster management technique itself.
Develop a comprehensive national policy that includes guidelines for prevention, detection, suppression, and post-fire management. This is the one thing. And it's important to engage local communities in forest fire management by empowering them through the education and incentives to work with forest departments. enhance the use of remote sensing technologies for near real time fire monitoring and early warning systems, and also officially recognize the forest fire as a disaster type under the National Disaster Management Authority Act to enhance the financial allocation and the response efforts, and also strengthen coordination between the national, state, and local agencies involved in forest fire management and disaster responses, and also develop a disaster management plan that outlines roles and responsibilities for all agencies involved in the forest fire responses. When it comes for global cooperation, encourage global cooperation by utilizing platforms like the Global Fire Management Hub to share knowledge and best practices in forest fire management. Yeah, these are the policies recommended for India when it comes for preventing and mitigating the wildfire impact. And I can say this, India has made significant progress in wildfire monitoring, but more advanced research, better data collection, and the policy interventions are needed to mitigate their environmental and air quality impacts effectively.
That's, yes, I mean, good, that quite impressive recommendations. Also, it's interesting, as you said, that we need to recognize it as a disaster first
Yeah.
under, right, the NDMA Act. And because I remember when the heat action plans came up because of the heat waves a few years ago, and NDMA took this active interest to have much better strategies and policies to manage these heat wave crises. We did see a lot of reduction in the deaths which were happening due to that. So probably if the first step would be to recognize this as a critical problem, then look out the policies that can be done. And as you said, it's not a one man game. You need the center to come together, the states which are probably prone to wildfires like Orissa and Chhattisgarh, Uttarakhand. And then, of course, the communities, the tribals and the local communities which live across these regions will have to be aware and better well prepared for this.
Yeah,
issue
people
too.
who are living like us, who are living in the cities, we might not know how vulnerable it is. But the
Yes.
people are living beside to forest, like tribal
Yeah.
people, they're actually affected from this. We
Yeah.
should look into it.
Yeah, it's not just lives, it's lives, livelihoods,
Yeah.
every other aspect is interlinked. So thank you, Shri. That was a wonderful discussion. I think our listeners have had much better insights into the issue of wildfire, how it's caused, its impacts, and also especially its significance for India, and probably how we can manage it as a way forward. So also, can you give just a 2-line thing about the map snaps that you've created recently?
Sure, Swati. Thanks for asking that. In Takshashila website, within Geospatial program webpage, there is a new section called MapSnap. And the first report I have made is about the Los Angeles wildfire impact. So I would like to tell that listeners can have a look on it.
Yeah, and just understand what happened really and how much the aerial
Exactly.
impact of it. Yeah, so thank you so much.
Thanks, Swati.
If you liked our show, dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs. Check us out at our Twitter handle @Takshashila INST or our website takshashila.org.in.